But you know, before we get started, I just want to say I'm from New York. I know I tend to talk fast. I don't mind making videos for you guys personally. So if there's a certain subject you'd like me to touch on, if I didn't go far enough into detail on something within the video, just leave it in the comment section. I read all of the comments. As you guys can see, I like and heart all of the comments. That's letting you know that I read all of the comments. I'm not just scrolling through liking. So if there's a subject you guys want me to touch on specifically, just leave it in the comment section and I promise you we'll get to it. All right, let's go. What's good with you, everybody? I'm Lowski.
And I'm Evan.
And welcome to
Father-Son Gardening.
So, let's go a little bit more in depth into the food forest and how I got into agroforestry and why I think this is going to be the way of the future for everybody. I knew that I didn't want to deal with pesticides. I knew I didn't want to deal with fertilizers. I knew if I grew food, I wanted it to be the cleanest food that was available. And agroforestry seemed to be the way, especially when you're in an area that has heavy clay soil. The only way to really break that up is with tree roots. So I knew I was gonna have to plant trees. So why not make it fruit trees? Then everything else start to connect from there. So step number one was to actually till the ground. And I know I'm a no-till grower, but there's gonna be situations out there where you have to till the ground first. It may be so heavily compacted from years and years and years of compaction that the only way to actually get that ground started is to till the ground first.
Stop the show.
Yes, on a spot like this, you get the pitchfork in, sink it. You can see it's compacted right here because this is where the dogs be, and you just lift it and you see that crack. Then you just go right in front of it and you do it again, and you just keep cracking all the way through down your row. Then once you get the compost and you add it to it, you'll be able to just boom. And as you can see, right after you crack it one time, you can see how soft that gets afterwards. And then once you add that compost to it, it's a whole different game. So this just becomes a whole new soil once you get that compost in it. And you can see how far down that sinks so easily now. Then once you mix that with your amendments and your compost, you're ready to plant. And that's a wrap. You can cover it with some hay afterwards if you want to. And that hay will also help, or rice hulls, or whatever it is that you want to use, wood chips, whatever. Just be careful with wood chips because they do, they will take the nitrogen out and hold it inside of the wood chips. So yeah, just see still compacted right here. You just sink it, boom, crack it. And then after you crack it, you can just do it one hand. And you're good to go. Add that compost and you're ready to plant. So after I tilled the land and began to add compost, I had to break it up, add the compost to it, mix it all together to start a more loomy soil that the roots would be able to get through a lot easier. Because if the roots can't get through and they're struggling and water retention is terrible and it's just running off all your top layers of soil, you're gonna run into issues time and time and time again. You gotta find a way to maintain that diversity that happens in the soil. You wanna maintain the structure of that soil as much as possible, and you can't do that if you're having runoff issues where every time it rains, it just puddles all of your topsoil down at the bottom of your hill or wherever you are. You don't want to have to deal with that. So I knew I wanted to stabilize the ground to be able to hold more moisture so I didn't have to use more water. So I knew that compost would be a key ingredient. So I sourced out some of the best compost that I can find. I went kind of easy on the mushroom compost because mushroom compost can start to add other issues later on. So I decided to just go with a nice compost, organic of course, and that's what we used to begin the beds. Now before we even began the beds, I had started planting trees around. So I had to go back with my son and we figured out a nice design that we can use that'll give us a pathway through it and still be able to basically be surrounded by our own forest and be able to grow our vegetable crops. We wanted to be able to get that kitchen garden right there outside of the door that's available to us for the things that we use the most, and we cook from this kitchen garden all summer long. So that was crucial to make sure that we had that right there, and we surrounded it by fruit trees, and the plants that need more shade we just plant closer to the fruit trees, and the plants that need more direct sun we leave them towards the middle so they're able to get the amount of sunlight they need to develop properly. We had to go and source the trees. We had to do our homework, do our due diligence to be able to find out what grows in our area. And I was actually shocked that I was able to get away with some of the stuff that I didn't know I could have plums and peaches. And also, I think there's even a pomegranate available, a Russian pomegranate that can take up to negative temperatures. So I started looking to figure out what can I grow and incorporate with everything else. Got the trees in the ground, and year after year after year, it just got better and better and better. Now when large rainfalls happen in my yard, you could go out there afterwards, you will not find any water. There's no standing water, there's no puddles of water. The ground intakes all of it. You can reach almost forearm deep into the ground because the soil is just so beautiful. That's from years of earthworms doing and red wigglers, that majorly red wigglers, because I deal with a lot of chop and drop. This garden feeds itself. The leaves that fall from the tree, the bark that comes off of the tree, the weeds that we take out, all of that gets left right on the ground and gets converted right back into nutrients, because that's how a garden is supposed to run. Self-sustainable, creates its own cycle. Even in the morning times, you can see where my yard is giving off a fog that you don't see around. So now we start to get our own microclimates, and we could design based on that. So once I got the fruits in, once I knew what I could grow, we began to get the beds together. We created pathways that we'll be able to walk through, but we trench these pathways. So when the pathways are slightly lower than the beds kind of sit above the pathways. So any water that comes into the beds go into those pathways and they sink in slowly. And that's the way you want it. You don't want that water running off down the street. You don't want it going into your neighbor's yard. You don't want to have to deal with any of that. All the water that falls, you want to be able to keep it, unless you're in an area that gets way too much water. Then that's something you will have to consider and take into consideration. But we focused on worm castings. We focused on that chop and drop. We focused on the legumes creating nitrogen into the soil. We focused on the cover crop that was going to put the phosphorus into the soil, because root crops like potatoes, root crops like taro, depending on where you are, you're going to have different root crops. Those are going to add the phosphorus. That's going to be where you get your boosters from, that you don't have to go to the store and get these PK boosters and these nitrogen boosters. You just got to create a healthy enough environment for the soil to be able to thrive. So now we got the vegetables in, and they just took off. There was nothing we had to do. We didn't have to come and fertilize. In the beginning of the year, I did one thing. I added some azomite, glacial rock dust, and I added some worm castings myself that came with some red wigglers, and I also added Epsom salt just to be able to make sure that the calcium uptake is good, because calcium is an immobile nutrient and it can't move without magnesium. So you want to make sure that Epsom salt is something that you add from time to time, and good mineral count. So I added the glacial rock dust for that. That is it. You don't have to worry about going and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. This system takes care of itself, and it will continue to take care of itself. If I walked away from this system for years, this system would continue to go by itself. It would still thrive. It would still produce healthy harvest, minus the vegetable garden. And even some of that will begin to produce itself. We don't have to plant tomatoes anymore if we don't want to. They come up wild in the backyard. That's from allowing them to die back into the ground, the ones that you don't harvest, because you can't harvest them all. So you allow them to die back into the ground, and they come back up like a weed every year. So we don't really have to plant tomatoes at this point if we don't want to. But this forest can sustain itself if I was to walk away from it. This forest is pandemic proof. If something was to happen, I can make sure that I can eat and grow enough things from this forest to be able to use. I can also get my medicines from this forest. I can also create my toothpaste from this forest. I can create so many things from having these plants around that the benefit outweighs all the other stuff that people are doing. So I don't understand the other gardening methods. I think that everyone needs to move towards this. This is the sustainability that you need. This is the paradise that you guys want to be able to see. We take nature walks to be able to go walk through forest. I could just go into my yard and do it. And I think everybody wants that luxury. I think everyone needs to have that. So we're going to keep the videos coming. Thank you guys for running the channel up. We just got a bunch of new subscribers. We just got a bunch of great views and great comments on the last one. Thank you to all of y'all. We're going to continue to pump out videos. We're going to continue to give footage. Until next time, I'm Lowski. Peace.